Hello, so yeah, this is just a quick video, mostly because there isn't anything new, other than some Crusade stuff that was kind of put out yesterday. Kind of thought there'd be something today maybe, as we haven't had any 11th edition specific rules this week, which is a shame, and kind of was hoping for something else to give us a better understanding of what's going on and what's coming up. We had the new detachments, which it kind of feels like Iron Hands has finally arrived, which is always feels like the precursor to the next edition, personally, for the last several. I mean, particularly 9th edition, you had insane character Dreadnought. Contemptors are now legends for Space Marines, and that kind of signalled the end times, as it were. And the new Space Marine detachment that exists, having kind of seen it played now, is pretty good. The transport one, especially when using a Storm Raven, the Redeemers, Eradicators are really good because, strangely enough, they're basically Fire Dragons but with 3 wounds, and slightly longer range without Fuegan, and can have sustained and lethal without spending a CP, and then can get back in the transport, which was a problem we'd fixed. So it's a bit of a weird times with 10th now, because there's a lot more haves and have-nots. Space Marines are now in the realm of over 25 detachments, which is insane, and I think hopefully 11th edition cleans that up and reduces it somewhat, because it's too many. Unless everyone has access to that many, you've still got Sisters with only 5. I believe they've not even hit 6, which is kind of a shame. Outside of Space Marines, I think CSM has the next highest number of detachments, and that's still half of that number, which is insane. But yeah, the Iron Hands this edition are blue. They are just Ultramarines running Repexes, possibly Redeemers, and definitely Storm Ravens, because that's kind of an oversight. I feel like that new detachment kind of tried to fix and then forgot to put in the rider of and not hover, which ironically the Crusade non-competitive rules they released to make the weird vehicles thing, which looks kind of cool. Really glad it's not a match play feature, just because it's another thing to track and keep hold of, and a lot of potential rules. With the fact they've explained that there'll be faction specific things, looks very cool. Glad it's not another thing I need to learn, understand and apply for match play, or even being a TO generally. But in there they said you can't use the vehicles to gain the bonuses if they have flight and hover, so it kind of feels like an oversight for the transport detachment for Space Marines that they've allowed the Storm Raven to kind of get away with it. Whether there will be a patch or any changes now, I feel is really unlikely, basically just due to the fact that we've got May and then it's 11th, so near enough. So you've got maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks at a push until 11th edition is live. So I can't foresee any emergency balance patch or anything like that now, as it's just too close to the end of the edition. They might do, who knows. The fact that they did another update on Catan was genuinely surprising. It didn't really change anything, but it was surprising. It just feels that Ultramarines really don't need +1 to wound anymore. They haven't done forever, and this new detachment really pushes things in a very specific Alpha Strike direction, which is a bit of a bad fields. I'm personally going to the Warhammer Open at Birmingham. Please come and say hi if you're there. There's now just over 100 people. They have changed it that you don't also have to buy an event ticket on top of the Warhammer ticket, which was ridiculously expensive. So I'm glad they kind of rolled back on that and have changed it slightly so it's a little bit more affordable overall. But my feelings about going to the event have changed significantly, as I was quite looking forward to it, and then there's been the latest batch of reveals, and it feels like it's going to be very different to what it potentially could have been, as aside from Catan and previous Ultramarines, it was mostly solved as a meta in being something that was slightly balanced. Defilers are interesting. I don't think they unhinge the game. The amount of damage they put out is obscene, but they're just cheap rather than broken. And again, I don't think they're going to see a fix before 11th. Which, yeah, the end of 9th was really fun. Primarily, I run Space Wolves at the time, so it was great. I just strapped a Melter and a Thunderhammer to everything, so it was amazing. It doesn't feel like that so much for the end of this edition. It feels like a lot of stuff has not had the same, here's some fun, go for it, end of edition, as some other factions. There's a lot of factions that feel have just been kind of left behind. Sisters got the new character that is 150 points of why bother. They still haven't had a 6th detachment, and it's clear that Games Workshop can come up with them. Space Marines have 25 plus detachments. They can come up with the detachments. It feels like Sisters have kind of been forgotten. It feels like quite a lot of things could have done with a few shake-ups in the last data slate just to change the points to be something more interesting. Just kind of revitalise that enthusiasm for the game, as opposed to just looking to build hype for 11th. So it's a little bit of a shame for me personally. I've got an event on the 9th of May, really looking forward to. I love running events personally, and I always love to see what people bring. And then have a 11th edition GT, which I have for the second time ended up running, very quick out the gate of a new edition. So that'll be good fun. It's always a lot of questions, a lot of queries from players, but it's always good fun because everyone is trying something new. I think with the rules so far, I think they look good. I think a lot of people are kind of jumping the gun because we don't have all of the information. Everyone's like, oh, it's a melee edition, oh, melee's going to win. We don't know how things operate, how things work. Things like the stealth keyword, for example, may not be -1 to hit. I kind of hope that they change that, purely because otherwise Guard, Tau, Votan, a lot of other factions will be hitting on 6s because it's -1 bliss skill, -1 to hit against certain things. Will make Venoms incredibly durable if they can get cover, but I do wonder whether they'll change it to maybe it becomes the current version of cover with stealth, so you get +1 to your save, which would be at least a different durability buff and not be quite so egregious to certain factions. I think the combat that they've shared so far looks really good. It looks really clean. It looks like it speeds up the game, so that's really solid. I think the fact that plunging fire might actually be a rule you have to learn, because it basically has not been something in the entire of this edition, is at least interesting. I don't think towering, having it within 12 inches, is too much of a problem. Most of the time, the thing that is going to be within 12 inches is either going to die because you're going to charge it, or is going to charge you and then subsequently die, so I don't think that's too much of a problem. The hidden rule, it will be very interesting as to how that works, as to whether there is some kind of they've been spotted sort of thing, because if they are just effectively current 10th edition lone op until they shoot, that is possibly a problem for certain factions like World Eaters and other things that don't really shoot and they just charge you. I'm very interested to see what the rest of the different missions look like and the different deployments and layouts look like, whether there is still the same ones that exist in 9th edition, I don't know. 10th edition even, skipping a whole edition. I do foresee that they've already mentioned that we've seen Crucible Battle, we've seen Hammer or Tipping, one of the two. I know that Tipping still will exist, I know that Sweeping will still exist from conversations. Whether Search and Destroy still exists, who knows? I imagine as it's something that's a bit different as a deployment, it will still exist, just because there are only so many ways symmetrically they can set up the board. But it will be hopefully soon that maybe we see what other missions look like and the combinations, because I think there is a lot of concern, and rightfully so, as to how they are balanced against one another, because there will probably be a convergence onto a certain force disposition, such as Purge the Foe. Maybe that one is like, cool, that's really easy, or some of the more action-based ones where there is potential to drop in and go, cool, there's my 30 primary turn 1, turn 2, whatever it is, and then I'm basically done and can focus on secondaries. My favourite thing so far, personally, because I often get screwed by the cards for secondaries, is the fact that you can hold more than one, and it would be really good to have that as a mechanic where you can keep hold of more than one. How long that stays, I don't know, because it might be a case of actually it's too strong. CP generation, how many CP you start with, all that sort of thing is gone. In terms of well, what it does, whether it works, whether it's the same, whether it's different, we don't know. So yeah, hopefully next week we get a lot more, or some more information of kind of how rules changes are coming, how they work, because at the moment I feel like we had a small amount and then we've kind of had nothing, which is a bit of a shame. And I think people maybe need to kind of wait to see the big picture, because it's really hard in this vacuum to kind of see how things work. They may have not shared certain things, like maybe there is a core strat that is ignore cover for any faction, which is huge. The big things for me are that I'm waiting to see is how 6-inch deep strike, if that still exists, whether factions still have 6-inch pile and consolidate, because with overrun, does an overrun move cap at 3, or does that also allow for a 6-inch move, because that's pretty big if so, as well as models that ignore ballistic and hit modifiers. Obviously they get significantly better going forward. Will all factions need to make sure they include some kind of really fast moving unit to get within 15 to turn off hidden? I think is kind of going to be interesting. I think list diversity is going to be much bigger, purely because of the fact that you can't plan for the missions anymore, outside of knowing the 15 variants that you could face, or 5 variants that you can face by doing the mirror, and then the 4 others, sorry, there's 15 in total, and then knowing the layout, so it might be a case of you don't face any Purge the Foe for an entire event, because it turns out that it's not as strong as others. And so I think it's going to be quite interesting from a list building variety, where you have to kind of plan for anything, rather than going, oh, I know I'm doing Purge the Foe, I know I'm doing Take and Hold, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that'll be interesting. Just wanted to kind of share my current feelings and thoughts, and hope you have a good weekend, and hopefully we see some new rules next week, and see you then. Cheers.